Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
Boeing shares have really been under pressure lately. Investors waiting detail too from flight data and equipment. So here to tell us more about it, break it all down for us, George Ferguson, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Aerospace Defense Airlines Analyst. George, I want to start with the flight data equipment to start here. Have they found all of them, and what particularly will they be looking for when it comes to this equipment?
Yeah, so I'm not totally sure if they found all the equipment. I knew they had found some of the recorders. I think once they get into it, I assume you're talking about the Air India crash, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and when they get into it, I think one of the items they're absolutely going to focus on is going to be what was going on in the engines in that Air India 787. Look, a Boeing 787 can lose one engine and still take off and gain altitude. So the videos we saw, circumstances indicate that both engines potentially were not producing enough lift. So my guess is that's where the focus is going to be, is on what was going on in the engines. It was an 11-year-old airplane. So we think that when all is said and done, probably not going to be a manufacturing issue either at Boeing or GE from original manufacturer, and probably going to be some sort of engine issue, which I think would probably, put Boeing not in the responsible category, for that crash, even though obviously something we're never happy to see, and very sorry about that.
George, you've, in your coverage of Boeing and your discussions with us, you've always made sure that we focus on what's important, and that is the deliveries of aircraft. June was a great month, wasn't it?
Looked pretty good. So we see about 60 deliveries. Of that, I think we had maybe 42 or so 737 deliveries. 737 is the moneymaker, so that's super important. Of those 42, we're focusing very closely on how many were first flown in 2025. And the reason we're doing that is we know Boeing has a lot of inventory airplanes. So if they're boosting deliveries through inventory airplanes, that's indicating to us that the factory isn't as strong as we would hope. What we're seeing right now when we look at Cerium data is 5 of those 42 airplanes are inventory deliveries, airplanes that were flown previous to this year. So that indicates it's something around 37 Maxes came through the Renton factory in June. That's a pretty nice number. That corresponds pretty well with Boeing CEO's indication that they were producing at a 38-ish throughput in the factory, and that they were going to be breaking into 42s levels sort of in the back half of the year. And so this absolutely confirms, I think, the improving health of the Boeing production system and that Renton factory.
Now, George, you mentioned CEO Kelly Ortberg. What's the word on the street? How has he been handling this new role? I mean, a lot of pressure's on him.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it's all done, it's going to be a function of did he get quality improved? Did he improve throughput? Did he generate cash? Did he improve the balance sheet of Boeing, sort of stave off any downgrades? And right now, I'd say the report card would be pretty good for what Kelly Ortberg is doing.
And George, you also told us that, tooling up these factories to crank up production, it's not as easy as it sounds. It's a little bit more difficult than manufacturing an automobile coming down the line here. And that goes to the labor issue. You need some pretty highly trained labor. And coming out of the pandemic, that was a challenge. How is Boeing doing these days on that front?
Yeah, so if we measure it from the throughput in the factory, it looks like it's doing better. We're hearing better sort of noises from the supply chain that labor is stabilizing. I think we see it in the country, right? The labor market isn't as sort of white hot as it was coming right out of the pandemic, especially for some of this manual labor that they're looking for. And so I think that helps stability. That stability allows you to go ahead and train people, improve throughput. So it appears to us, all those indicators that, labor is stabilizing, quality is improving, and that's definitely having, Boeing's benefiting from it.
George, you mentioned deliveries earlier. The Paris Air Show is a huge event for these airlines. Yes. How did Boeing fare coming out of that?
Yeah, so we haven't seen a lot of orders for Boeing recently, and we didn't see any at Paris Air Show. Right, they had pulled out. I think just as they were monitoring the developments of that Air India crash. But we really haven't seen a lot of orders recently for Boeing. I suspect that given the tariff backdrop, you're just not going to see a lot of orders for Boeing until that tariff backdrop gets cleared, right? Boeing has one factory they build 737s at. It's in the U.S. So tariffs between us and the rest of the world always get in the way. That has to get cleared up.
George, great stuff as always. George Ferguson, Senior Aerospace, Defense, and Airlines Analyst.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
We're going to keep it here kind of in that AI tech space. I want to go to Mandeep Singh. He's Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Tech Industry Analyst. So Mandeep, we have this sign of just how competitive the AI space is for talent. So you have Meta possibly poaching Apple's top AI executive, offering this big payout. Explain to us, first of all, who this guy is and how much are they offering him?
Well, I don't know the exact dollar amount what they're offering, but clearly Meta is going big in terms of poaching the top AI researchers. We saw that with the Scale AI acqui-hires. They pretty much poached the founder. And look, I think they want to assemble the top 50 AI researchers that are out there who have got published papers, and they are paying up in this case because they've made all the big investments in terms of compute, in terms of infrastructure, but they don't have a cloud business or some other form of monetization that, a Google has or a Microsoft has. So from that perspective, I think it's crunch time for them to really show that, they can develop an ecosystem with their large language model, which has been underperforming relative to OpenAI, Google, and Claude. And I think it's the founder, Mark Zuckerberg, who really is going all out. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't expect any other CEO to be that aggressive with paying $5 billion for 50 people. Literally, that's what the expense that we are talking about. So Facebook, Meta as a company, has over 76,000 employees with an expense base of 115 billion. They're adding 5 more billion for 50 people. That's what we are talking about here.
Wow, that's an order of magnitude.
Yeah.
All right, so it's clear that Meta's all in. What does this mean for Apple? If I were an Apple shareholder, I'd be concerned here. A, I'm losing talent. But B, it's coming from an area where I feel like I'm underinvested already, perhaps. Yeah. I'm already behind. What do you think this means for Apple?
I mean, clearly, everyone on the research side realizes that Apple doesn't have the big AI cluster that these companies have. And, generative AI is all about having a large cluster, training your model on that cluster, and then really building from there. So from that perspective, Apple has lagged behind. And if you're a top AI researcher, there are better companies to work for right now. So I'm not surprised, a top AI researcher has ended up taking up the offer. But for Apple, look, they're going to use a combination of partnerships and some on-device AI investment, which is what they have done in terms of, their own model efforts. They're going to partner with Claude, OpenAI, probably Google as well, once the antitrust issues are over. Mm-hmm. And that's how they're going to provide the functionality. As long as it's cloud-based, they have the app infrastructure to offer AI. For on-device AI, they have to do it natively at the operating system level. You can't really leverage the large language model from OpenAI on device because you have to really open up your operating system, which Apple won't do.
I have to add some kind of AI in my resume. I think I'm behind the eight ball on this. Mandy, what kind of tone does this set for the industry? What kind of message is this sending?
I mean, to my mind, this is a very high risk play right now. The market sentiment is Meta can do no wrong. They are making all the right moves with getting these, big AI researchers. But at the end of the day, it is, they're doubling down on CapEx, adding more OpEx. So from a spending perspective, Meta is going all in. And so, once it starts to weigh on free cash flow and the returns are not there, which is why I said, with everyone else, you see the AI monetization. If you have a coding agent from Microsoft or Google, they are monetizing it. With Meta, all these are upfront investments with the hope that it will add more engagement time across their family of apps. They will probably have a killer AI product that they'll be able to monetize with, in addition to the recommendation systems. So the stakes are getting higher and higher, but clearly they are doubling down in terms of their investment. And at some point, the monetization question will kick in. Probably not this earnings season, but maybe a couple of quarters from now.
All right, Mandeep Singh, big numbers. That's his companies, folks. They traffic in huge numbers, huge investments, huge revenue, huge free cash flow. That is the state of global technology these days, centered in the United States. Mandeep Singh, Senior Tech Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. We appreciate that. And again, Meta going all in, not that they weren't before, but it's just kind of another example of the type of investments they are making there.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
I think during the pandemic, we all became familiar with this concept of supply chains and global supply chains and where stuff comes from. And boy, when the ship stops sailing, that's a problem. And do we need to bring some of that stuff closer to home? And that's one of the reasons I think for President Trump and his focus on tariffs here. But let's get a sense of what the global supply chains are looking at now and how they may react in a world where tariffs are higher. Brandon Daniels joins, CEO of Exiger. He joins us from Chicago. Brandon, how do you put into context all this talk about tariffs and kind of what it means for the global supply chain and how we get stuff, where we make stuff, where we import stuff from? How do you guys think about that?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on. It's good to talk to you guys today. I think when we think about it, it is a reflection of a major shift in priorities across all countries from a global commerce perspective, right? Like when you think about what the United States is doing and what the administration is doing, is they're trying to prioritize three things, right? The first thing that we've in our discussions and in our talks with the administration, they want to bring back manufacturing where the United States can be competitive. And that's what our customers are utilizing our AI tools today and our multi-tier supply chain visibility to understand. Where can they actually source in the United States in a way that is at parity with their global sourcing requirements? And so that is mostly focused on where labor arbitrage has been taken out of the equation. So think things like additive manufacturing, think things like, largely automated production floors. Those are the areas where you're starting to see major cost collapse in between emerging markets and more sophisticated markets, because the cost of the manufacturing equipment, it's the same across the globe. The cost of the land, I mean, there's parts of North Texas that are cheaper than parts of Hebei, China. And with the volume of operators necessary in these factories going down and them having to be also more higher skilled, the major labor arbitrage effect kind of dwindles. And so they want to move those areas of automated manufacturing back to the United States. And so I see our customers focused on those commodity areas, as well as some of the more specialized areas that require automated manufacturing floors, that stuff coming back to the U.S. The second thing is national security and economic security. So from a national security perspective, there's a core focus on semiconductors because AI is the future of our national security capacity, whether it's in managing, UAS and drones, or it's in, fighting cyber attacks. AI is where it's at. And then the other area is in pharmaceuticals. It's actually keeping our, medical supply chains clean and independent. Obviously we pulled back the veil on that in COVID. Exiger was the technology utilized by the federal government to purchase $7 billion of goods and to do it in a way that could get it to the healthcare front lines quickly, and in a way that didn't allow for fraud, waste, abuse, and adversarial investment. And I think they're looking to try to expand that and trying to bring back pharmaceutical manufacturing, medical device manufacturing to the United States. And so when I look at this, I see those two first strategies getting, sort of being prioritized. The last one is honestly to ramp up our actual external tariff collection. There have been estimates between 30 and $100 billion of transshipment per year. You saw this in the deal with Vietnam, where it was 20% tariffs and then 40% tariffs on expected or potential transshipment goods, right? So one of the things that we've seen is China has used this sort of global economic coercion to create veneer centers of manufacturing across the globe. And the U.S. is trying to crack down on that to level the playing field.
All right, Brendan, I hear you talk about a couple of things. So AI, pharmaceuticals. One of the things you mentioned in your notes is how autos are going to be the best case study and how nuanced this policy really is. Can you dig into that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So auto manufacturing is a great case study of where all of this might be going. I don't think we'll end up with just blanket country level policies. And I think those blanket country level policies will get nuanced down to the HTS code or to the actual sort of segment or sector of goods, right? And I think that they will get nuanced down to a place where, the recognized dependencies we have on critical minerals or specialty alloys or on specific goods that are indigenous to some of our allies, where those are necessary for us to do the manufacturing in the United States, I think those goods will become subject to exceptions or exemptions, very similar to USMCA. So automotive's a great example of this because basically you can have 15% of your auto that's being manufactured in the United States. You can have 15% of it be parts, components, and goods from other places. Right. And your entire tariff burden can be offset by the 3.75% tariff credit you get on the vehicle's MSRP, right? And so it's almost like you're tariff free if you have 15% of the goods coming from everywhere else. And that's because we realize that in many cases, there are things that the U.S. doesn't make yet. And it's going to take a while for the U.S. or our allies to build those things. Right. And we want to give, people the ability to have some leniency there.
Red headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal. Trump says August 1 tariff deadline won't be extended. We'll have more reporting on that. Brandon, we've got 30 seconds left here. When you talk to your customers, who's going to pay tariff costs? Is it going to be the importer, the manufacturer, the distributor, or the consumer? Or how are these tariffs going to be borne by the economy?
I think the consumer is going to be the last to feel it. And I think, the fact is, this is going to be absorbed somewhere in the supply chain. In 2018, when we had the original Trump tariffs on steel, the entire defense industry, the entire automotive industry, airline industry, they all ate it, right? Because you just needed the steel. Yep. And you didn't want to affect the end market. I think that the consumer is going to be the last to feel it on this one.
All right. Hopefully that is the case. Brandon Daniels, thank you so much. Brandon Daniels, he's the CEO of Exiger, joining us from Chicago via Zoom, talking about tariffs, talking about supply chains. Fascinating and fluid situation.
This is the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live each weekday, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.